Let's have another conversation about the ever so elusive and controversial Canadian division. Now, I say controversial and that kind of sounds like a bad word, but no, I mean controversial as in quite literally worthy of having a conversation about, because the Canadian division this year is so wide open, and I see so many people everywhere kind of giving off similar vibes with where they think this whole division is going to go, that I wanted to make another video about it too, because the last time we spoke about the Canadian division in a video was back when it was leaked. This was like in the middle of, October? A little bit after free agency started, and we had the rumblings that a Canadian division might be in the works, but you know, it's been a long time since then, so I wanted to get some other thoughts out there for those of you who might be new to the channel. And also, we had ourselves some very good news earlier this week, coming from, I think it was Renaud Lavoie, who came out and talked about how, yeah, the NHL is going to have the okay. Take a look at this. It's a go. The NHL officially received word that the green light from the federal government has indeed been put in place. And the 5 provinces with NHL teams on their territories, so that's BC, that's Alberta, that's Manitoba, that's Ontario, and that's Quebec, they will all start the season on January 13th. And it didn't even really hit me just how competitive and how tight this is going to be until I actually looked at the actual Canucks schedule for 2020-2021. Because in theory, it's, oh, they're gonna play games against the teams in their own division, cool. And then you go to the actual Canucks schedule and you read it off. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this right here. The schedule for the Vancouver Canucks goes Edmonton, Calgary, Montreal, Ottawa, Winnipeg, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Toronto, Montreal. And like it goes like that the whole way through. And at this point, when I read the schedule on paper, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be crazy. Absolute insanity, I tell you, because I've said it this whole time, the only guarantee that I have for the Canadian division that I'm gonna put out there into the universe right now is that Ottawa will be last. Every other spot is up for grabs, but when it comes to how exactly the top spots and the tiers are going to go out, I kind of have my own personal label for that. Because in my opinion, and I've said this a few times before, I do think the first team is going to be either Toronto or Montreal. I think these two teams will finish 1 and 2 in the Canadian division standings. And for good reason. I think it's a good reason. Everybody has been talking about how Montreal is going to be a mid-tier team or somewhere near the bottom because that's where they were last year. I posted about this on Twitter the other day saying that I think people are sleeping on the Habs, and a lot of comments in the replies, because I know the replies and the comment section, yeah, it's definitely the best source of information available that exists on the internet. A lot of people were like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. This is what Canadian Zombie says. Fellow YouTuber, he does Winnipeg Jets stuff. If you like the Jets, go check out Canadian Zombie. We have a whole bunch of other people that I've seen as well that are ranking the Canadians a little bit lower down, at least among people who are not actually like analysts or whatever, because I think it's widely agreed upon by most analysts and TV people that Montreal is somewhere near the top. But Montreal, man, they got way better this season. And they were in a spot where, if you know what exactly it was the problem with this team in the previous year, it was the fact that they couldn't score any goals. And now they have very legitimate goal-scoring talent in their lineup, so much to the point that, hey, even without these guys that can score goals in their lineup that they have now, they were still able to defeat Crosby. They were still able to take the Philadelphia Flyers to, what was it, a Game 6? I forgot how long the series was. It was a long time ago, forgive me. But this team now has addressed their weaknesses, and they actually got better in terms of their backup goaltending, which wasn't even a problem, but hey, increasing your depth in one area is not a bad thing in the slightest. And because of that, I think the Canadiens are better than the Edmonton Oilers, than the Calgary Flames, and the Vancouver Canucks, and then the Winnipeg Jets. And, you know, it's not even to disrespect the other teams, because these other teams, if they ended up winning the Canadian division, I wouldn't be surprised. I just wouldn't necessarily have predicted it. But just seeing it on paper, you know, it's so trippy seeing these games. Calgary, Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg. Like, bro, we're gonna actually have this done. We're only playing 6 other teams in the league if you're one team in the league. It's a huge diversion from what we're used to because usually in the NHL you play every team at least once. That's kind of how it goes. You play 30 games guaranteed at least, with each of them being against a different team. And then you have some teams you play twice, some teams you play thrice, other teams you play 4 times or 5 times, which fill in the extra 82 slots. And there are some teams in the NHL season that you only play once, other teams that you play 5 times because you're divisional rivals or whatever. It's kind of difficult to internally process the idea of a season where you only play games against 6 other teams. And it's cool, it's really cool. I'm looking forward to it. It's just kind of weird, and I would be lying if I said that it wasn't weird, because just seeing the schedule on paper, man, it's really tripping me out. It's also kind of going over the insecurities I have with streaming, because the Canadiens are going to be playing so many games, and I want to focus mostly on streaming Habs games. So seeing the Habs against the Canucks, we can do pregame hype streams for that as well. But all the other teams like Detroit that I follow as well, I want to get some Rangers games in there, some Kings games in there too, maybe some Blackhawks as well. Just any team, any game that I find that is actually cool and that I want to, get some commentary out there for. I'd love to stream for these games. It's just, for all the Montreal stuff, it's going to be difficult because I've said it a ton. I can't stream Canucks games. It's just not going to happen because of how I am as a person when I watch the Canucks. But the Canadiens play the Canucks so much that all of a sudden now it's kind of like, do I even think about it? Do I stick to the hype streams or whatever, or do we just recap things at the end when they're done? Because they cover both of the teams or whatever. But, there certainly are big dilemmas, and this whole divisional system is going to cause the rivalries that we have to boil over even more than we've had them in the past. Because like it or not, Toronto fans and Vancouver fans, we don't like each other. You don't need me to tell you that. Lots of Canucks fans are very obnoxious to Leaf fans, and lots of Leafs fans are very obnoxious to Canucks fans about prospects and who's better, Pettersson and Matthews and all that stuff. I get it. It's cool. Rivalries do exist for a reason. But we only would play Toronto like 2 or 3 times a year. Now if we go to the schedule, hey, Vancouver's playing Toronto 10 times. 10 times, bro. Like, if this was a normal season, that would have been the most played team by far. Like, we only would play Calgary and Edmonton like 5 times in a year. Now we're playing Toronto across Canada 10 times. Like, it's just in complete overdrive, and I can't wait for the madness that will unfold with something like this. But man, it's just going to be so cool seeing these teams go head-to-head, and that's also a big reason as to why I'm a big believer in the Canadiens, because the Canadiens, for some reason, they fared really well against Canadian teams, and they just got better over the offseason. Sure, Calgary, you could say they got better too, because Tanev could be seen as an upgrade over TJ Brodie. Markstrom is a huge plus in net. The Edmonton Oilers have so much forward depth now, they don't know what to do with it. The Vancouver Canucks, you could say that Schmidt is an upgrade from Tanev, and Holtby, I don't know if he's an upgrade over Markstrom, but at the end of the day, Markstrom and Demko from 2019-20, in my opinion, is inferior to Demko Holtby in 2020-2021. By a very, very slim margin, and I'm so close to being able to be proven wrong. So that's probably going to change sometime soon if anything goes down the worst-case scenario path like we know it can with the Vancouver Canucks. As for my Canucks, though, I wouldn't be surprised if this team was a middle-of-the-pack team. I wouldn't be surprised if this team, by some miracle, lost out on the playoffs because they got beat out by Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, and, Edmonton in the standings, because Winnipeg all of a sudden has Stasny and Laine playing in the top 6, and these guys are tearing the house down with second-line minutes, and then Edmonton with Draisaitl, Yamamoto, McDavid, all the other guys they acquired too. Ooh, Kyle Turris is there in Edmonton as well, man. That's going to be nasty. I wouldn't be surprised if the Canucks ended up losing, because their step backs from the recent season up until now would be quite significant when you talk about the forward depth and all that stuff, because, even though this team did somewhat improve in the goaltending side and with the one individual defenseman standpoint, because Tanev could be seen as not as good as Schmidt in terms of an overall team value perspective, hey, you still lost Troy Stecher. Hey, you still lost Tyler Toffoli. You still lost these guys, man. And that sucks. It really, really does. But yeah, oh my gosh, we actually went 9 minutes and 30-something seconds talking about the Canadian division like this. We only focused on 2 teams, my gosh. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Toronto, Montreal were number 1. I'd say maybe Edmonton and Calgary, maybe Winnipeg could be thrown in there in that second tier, with Vancouver trailing off towards the end. And then you have Ottawa at the end, who will be hanging on to dear life Even though Melnick says he thinks this team can win a cup now, I'm not really too sure they can, finish as one of the top 4 in this Canadian division. So talk to me in the comments what you think about all this stuff. We only made this video because the confirmation was given out that Canadian cities can play with their teams and all that. But I hope you enjoyed this video of Ash99. Catch me tomorrow. We're going to be streaming for Canada versus the Slovakian team for the World Juniors. So is Ash99. And bye.